I welcome you. You are welcome to the Messiah Revelation Ministry and End Time Prophetic Ministry. You look at what is happening in the world and you look into the book of Revelation. You look into Matthew 24 and then you align Bible prophecy with what is happening in the world. And then you know that we are living in perilous times. And Daniel's prophecy is being fulfilled before our eyes. Kingdoms will fall and preparations are made. They are being made for kingdoms to fall. And we are looking at all these things in light of Bible prophecy in the end times, the times before the arrival of the Messiah. What will happen? There will be wars and rumors of wars, and you see that, and we see other evidence of prophecy being fulfilled. But today we are focusing on Russia and United States. Enemies have turned into enemies, and that is our observation. From enemy to enemy, from enemies to enemies. In the Cold War, Russia and America were enemies, but today they are more enemies. June 2024, Putin declared that America is an enemy of Russia. And when you make a public declaration that America, quote unquote, is an enemy, and then you know the political and military implications. Of course, when you are an enemy of America, America will treat you as an enemy. And so there was a time America had a law, trading with the enemy act. Trading with the enemy act. It will be unlawful to trade, for an American to trade with a country that is an enemy of America, trading with the enemy act. And so when Russia declares that America is an enemy of Russia, and we know the implications, it's leading to Armageddon, it's leading to war. And if you are a discerning person, you know that we are living in perilous times. The things that are happening are not happening in isolation. Putin declaring America as an enemy has geopolitical implications. And Putin has done certain things in recent times. That is a shift in policy, deploying missiles in striking distance of the West, deploying tactical nuclear weapons. And then the announcement came that Russia submarines will be moving to the Caribbean, will be moving to Cuba, Havana, 4 warships and 2 nuclear submarines. And they will be moving to the Caribbean, Havana, Cuba. And of course, the image that comes into your mind is the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 that nearly led to nuclear war between America and United States in 1962. And at that time, there was evidence that the nations were preparing to nuke one another. And so now you see Putin sending warships very close to the United States and nuclear submarines. And so the battle is going nuclear, is turning nuclear. And then you look at Ukraine, and what is happening in Ukraine is that the war is turning from proxy to direct war. A proxy war gives us time because there's no direct confrontation between the two powers. But in the case of Ukraine, you see that the proxy war is slowly and rapidly turning into direct confrontation between Russia and NATO and the West. And that is very clear when you see NATO giving weapons to Ukraine to strike Russia, and when you see NATO troops in Ukraine, whether they are advisors or they are in combat, it's moving from proxy war to direct war. And the next question we ask ourselves is that will one of the actors do preemptive strike? Of course, when we're talking about preemptive strike, we are talking about psychology. Preemptive strike will be palatable because when you face an existential threat, the only option will be a preemptive strike. And the person who is going to put his finger on the code, on the trigger, will be acting irrationally at that point. And we are very close to a preemptive strike. It's possible. So when you hear Putin saying America is an enemy, then a doctrine comes into his mind. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so when America is declared enemy of Russia, and then the enemies of America will be enemies of Russia. It's very unusual for a leader of the world to come out openly to declare that another country is quote unquote an enemy. And this is what we see happening between United States that is declared quote unquote enemy of Russia. And of course, America has always considered Russia to be an enemy of United States. And in the Cold War, there were a lot of casualties, political casualties, military casualties. Many countries were toppled. So many coups d'etats came, assassinations of leaders. Because if you are a friend of my enemy, then you are my enemy. And so as a result of that, entire continent of Africa was destroyed because of the perception of alignment. You are aligned to my enemy, and so you will be considered as an enemy. And so that policy, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, resulted in so many atrocities and even genocide in many parts of the world. Long-range missiles will be supplied to the enemies of America. It's okay. Let me repeat that. Long-range missiles will be supplied to the enemies of America, and we are looking at it from 2 points: um, prophetic and political. And when I say prophetic, it's based upon a vision that was given to me several years ago. Um, and in that vision, I saw Putin holding 2 sticks, one long stick and one short stick. And he gave the long, he actually used the long stick, and then he gave the short sticks to some people. And they were very happy that they had the short sticks. Uh, Prophetically, the way I interpret that vision is that the long sticks represent long range missiles, and the short sticks represent short range missiles. So that's the prophetic aspect of it. But now, politically and in actual life, Putin is declaring that America is an enemy, and Russia will be obliged to supply long-range missiles to the enemies of America. And so the vision is coming to pass. And it's very, very terrible. But what the Lord has said will come true. And if you are watching this video, you also should be aware that in August 2018, there was another vision where I was riding in a car inside the US, and there was a radio announcement that Russia was going to strike the US in 30 minutes time. That is 2028 in a vision. And so you have to do a prophetic mapping, prophetic analysis of the events going on in the world. Putin said that because of the shift in their doctrine, and they will be compelled to give missiles to enemies of America to strike American bases over the world. And Russia will also be obliged to support national liberation movements. And for those of you who are aware of history of national liberation movement, we are talking principally about Africa, when African nations struggled for their independence. We're talking about South Africa, we're talking about Angola, we're talking about Zimbabwe, we're talking about Guinea and Bissau. Those countries were under colonialism, and they were struggling for independence from Western colonialism and imperialism. And the Soviet Union at that time supported the national liberation movements. And they were fighting for the African nations to be free from colonial imperialism. And at the time of making this video, you see Russia supporting African nations to disentangle themselves from French imperialism and new colonial control over black people in Africa. And that has added another dimension to the PROXY war between NATO and Russia, because Russia is cutting the umbilical cord linking Africa to Europe, and that is dangerous for the economy of France in particular, because the French president said that without exploitation of Africans, France will be a third world country. Haiti paid reparations for France, and that is a historic case of an enslaved nation paying reparations to the enslaver after the enslaved nation got independence from the enslaver, the Gentile European power France. And so the war between Russia and NATO has so many dimensions. It is not only about Ukraine, it's about Africa. Because Russia has now identified as an ally of national liberation movements. And Russia has now declared they worship a black Jesus. And that is another bomb, is Putin's black Jesus bomb that has been deployed all over the world. And now Putin has declared that he will also support national liberation movements. I thought that the African nations have gotten their independence, and so there wouldn't be any national liberation movements. But when I thought about it, I know that there's a difference between flag independence and actual independence. On the day of independence, including March the 6th, 1957, a flag was raised where the British flag was lowered and then a new flag came into being. But the first president of Ghana wrote in the book, Neo-Colonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism, and he explained that the African nations were given independence, but it led to a new form of colonialism, which is called neo-colonialism. And so we look at the power politics among nations. There will be wars and rumors of war prophetically, and nations will rise against nations, and this is what is happening. And you see a reenactment of the colonial wars and the new colonial wars. And when we see France very, very angry about Russia, not because of Ukraine alone, but also because of Russia's influence in disentangling French neo-colonial domination on the continent of Africa. And that is a war. And so now you see warships, you see Russian warships heading towards the Caribbean, principally in Cuba. 4 warships and 2 nuclear submarines. And it is an exercise, quote unquote. The Russians are saying it's an exercise. The Cubans are saying it's an exercise. But the warships will remain in the Caribbean in the summer and will stay for further exercise in the fall. And you see what is going to happen in the fall. You have a very consequential presidential elections going to take place inside the United States. And at that time, the exercise probably will continue. Russia's nuclear exercise in the Caribbean, and they are also planning to do a global exercise. Of course, it's part of power projection. But you have to remember that conventionally, Russia may not be able to fight the West. And so it will be probably tactically strategic for Russia to fight a nuclear war where Russia has a nuclear advantage. If you want to conclude nuclear advantage, is based upon the nation that has more nuclear weapons, and that is Russia. You have to remember that in a nuclear war, nobody can win, nobody can profit from the nuclear war. But the world is crazy. And Paul told us in Ephesians 6, verse 12, we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, we wrestle with principalities and powers. America has a destiny, and the founding fathers of America knew about the destiny. And of course, the destiny is not good. And we are analyzing all these events in light of what is happening. Red lines are drawn in Ukraine, and the red lines are broken. Would there be a time when there will be a nuclear consequence, which is very, very close at the time we are making this video? The mainstream media is not talking about it, but something is happening behind the scenes. The enemy is now more than an enemy. We are living in a time worse than the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And Putin has declared that America is an enemy. And you have to do the dotting and the crossings. Dot the I's and cross the T's when Putin says America is an enemy. And when you see Putin deploying tactical nuclear weapons, and when you see America testing ICBMs, meaning Minuteman III, and when you see other wars in the Middle East and other places, and when you see China preparing to take over Taiwan, the enemies are more than enemies. So it's time for us to prepare, because the days of Daniel will be fulfilled, and we just happen to be among the generation that will see all these things happening. And don't be surprised, because the final trumpet of heaven has already sounded, based upon revelation that I received on August 27, 2013. So the enemies are now more than enemies. The proxy war is turning more and more, inch by inch, into direct confrontation. And when you see the residence of Putin burned, set on fire inside Russia, then you can see that it is no longer a proxy war, it's direct war. And the finger is closer to the trigger. And it means that you need to prepare. And the preparation is not getting more food or getting more medicine hidden in your basement. The preparation involves repenting of your sins and preparing for the coming of the Messiah. The coming of the Messiah will mean a time for judgment. And at that time, there will be no preparation because the Messiah will come like a thief in the night. And we didn't have more time to prepare. And we will say that we didn't know. But we are on notice. We are on notice because of the geopolitical events going on in the world, prophecy being fulfilled in front of our eyes. Prepare, as the wars and the rumors of wars are in plain sight, as prophecy is being fulfilled. The war in Ukraine is an unquenchable war. I already did a video about it because on February 22nd, 2022, or on the day that Russia entered Ukraine, I had a vision of a fire, a mushroom crowd, and then I heard a voice that fire cannot be quenched. Or I had a discernment from the vision. I had a discernment from the vision that fire is unquenchable, because nobody was willing to quench the fire in the vision, and the fire was burning. And of course, in another vision, I had a voice, they are about to unleash. That was a prophetic voice in a vision. And these are the leaders of the world, the kings of the world. And you know, Lucifer has his agents in parliaments and in presidential palaces. And they will do whatever they have to do so that they will take as many people as possible to the lake of fire. A word to the wise is enough. Thank you. My email, raptureafrica@yahoo.com. Small letters, one word. Share the video and prepare. Enemies are turning more into enemies. PROXY war is about to be a direct war, and that will be nuclear. And then the end will come. Thank you for watching this video.